Well, let's jump into more running backs as we get into love-hate, and that's where we start. And, of course, we're looking at the Miami offense, as we often do, and that is Raheem Mostert, Matthew. He tops the love list for running backs. He comes in as RB6 for you in a matchup against the Panthers that the Dolphins are favored by 2 touchdowns.
He's had at least 15 fantasy points in each of his last 3 games when he's had 12 touches. Panthers allow the second most fantasy points to running backs this season. They've allowed the most rushing touchdowns to opposing running backs. No team in the NFL has allowed more. They're tied for the most. And, oh, by the way, no Devon Achane. So Jeff Wilson Jr., by the way, not mentioned. We didn't see that on the screen, but Jeff Wilson Jr. practiced yesterday, which is exciting. Dolphins running back coach says he looks good to go. He has not officially been activated yet, but it's trending in the right direction for Wilson to be out there. But still, even if he's out there, it's his first game back. Mostert should be the lead back in an amazing matchup. He's my running back 6 this week. And it wouldn't shock me if he finishes as the #1 running back in fantasy this week. Yep. He has that kind of upside.
13.5-point favorites for the best offense in football. So most that just by accident might score 2 touchdowns.
And it just goes to show to all NFL players out there, Raheem Mostert on the show last year, and now look at how well he's doing. So you come on the show, you have a great year.
Yep. No. Ipso facto, as you say.
Ipso facto. Jonathan Taylor was on the show. He got paid.
Yes.
CD
Lamb was on the show, had a great game against the Niners, and so forth.
George Kittle was on the show. George Kittle had 3 touchdowns. Yep. It just goes to show you.
There's no denying this.
It's science. It's absolutely. Deebo Samuel was on the show, and then he was a decoy the next game. But overall, he's usually pretty good.
Yeah. Great game against the Giants.
Yes. Yep. There you go.
Our next one here, Jay, Isaiah Pacheco against the Broncos. We saw what Breece Hall did to this Broncos defense. We've seen what a lot of offensive players have done to this Broncos defense. He checks in as a top 10 running back for Matthew this week.
Yep, and his rushing prop on DraftKings is 74.5, minus 135 the over. I don't think it's ever been that high.
I was gonna say
for Isaiah Pacheco. That's as high as it's ever gotten. And look, against this Broncos rushing defense, which is activated, 4 touchdown games for Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane combined, activated Breece Hall back into a top 5 running back in the NFL on talent. I think that this is as good a situation as Isaiah Pacheco will ever have.
No team in the NFL allows more rushing yards per game than the Denver Broncos, right? 164 rushing yards per game, 6.1 yards per carry to opposing running backs. Obviously, some of that's inflated by how insane the Miami game was and Achane and Mostert, but still, in 4 out of the 5 games they played this year, the Broncos have allowed at least 22 fantasy points to a running back. Pacheco is clearly the lead back for the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, we talked about maybe isn't great weather there, so maybe the passing isn't working as much. They want to feed Pacheco even more. Game script should work. It is a short week as well, so yeah, man. Give me some Isaiah Pacheco. He's a top 10 running back play this week. He's my running back 9.
Connor, you watched the Broncos pretty closely, allegedly, as they played the Jets. What's wrong with this defense? Because this was an elite defense last year. Do you think this is just going to be the situation going forward this year?
There's no gap control in their run defense. It's a lot of guys guessing. It's a lot of players that are just simply not good run defenders anyway. I mean, you watch the Breece Hall 72-yard touchdown run. The Jets had a lead back blocking fullback on the play. He didn't have to block anyone. They ran out of players that would have made the tackle on Breece, and Breece scored anyway. The Jets had an extra blocker that they didn't even need on the play. It's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. That's how bad they are. That's how bad they are. So, yes, this isn't like a weird
I'm just going to watch and enjoy the play.
Yeah, literally nothing to do. Yeah. So that's how bad the Broncos defense are, and this is not a trend. This is a season-long thing that will continue.
Yep. And they've also, again, the Broncos traveling on a short week to Kansas City, so that, it's an offense they know well, but still, it doesn't feel like
what could go wrong?
What could go wrong? It's they don't look super prepared.
All right, so expect big things from Isaiah Pacheco, who had a good day against the Jets defense a couple weeks ago, and that's who DeAndre Swift has this week, guys. He comes in, Barry, as RB12 for you, and Swift has taken this job and simply ran away with it.
I see what you did there.
You like that one?
I do. Listen, this is a pro-Swift show, whether it's Taylor or DeAndre, as he's leaping over tacklers there with his tucked-in shirt, Jay Croucher, because real men – oh, actually, it got untucked.
He's mic'd up for NFL films.
He's mic'd up for NFL films. That's what it is, exactly. He didn't mind the gold wire. He's tougher than me. He's also better than me, right? 4 straight games with at least 17 touches. He's also had basically a 15% target share over the past 2 weeks, which has been really nice. That was always one of the anti-arguments against him in the preseason was, well, the Eagles just don't really throw to their running backs. But the last 2 weeks, they have been as well. I know people might be scared about the matchup with the Jets, but believe it or not, New York actually bottom 10 in terms of most fantasy points allowed to running backs this season. You can run on the Jets, especially when you're obviously behind one of the best offensive lines in football. So, yeah, give me DeAndre Swift as a top 12 running back this week. I think people might be scared off the matchup, and they shouldn't be.
Yeah, and I think the key is, as you mentioned, the work in the passing game. When he was going off against Minnesota and Tampa Bay, those 175, 130 rushing games back-to-back, he only had 14 receiving yards across those two games. Now he's had 10 receptions the past two games. He's clearly separated himself from Kenneth Gainwell.
Correct.
And now, I mean, they're touchdown favorites, so you'd expect that they would be able to run the ball.
A couple others receiving votes. James Cook, who we talked a lot about earlier in the week. Jaleel McLaughlin, or as some people would say, a rich man's Jahmyr Gibbs. And Imari DiMercado, who was a big hit on the waiver wire this week, guys.
Giants have allowed the second most rushing yards to running backs this season. James Cook is a top 20 play for me. Again, we talked about him on yesterday's show. Jaleel McLaughlin, tonight, look, he's had 133 scrimmage yards on 22 touches over the last 2 weeks. We just talked about it with Javonte Williams, that maybe they limit him a little bit in his first game back. Remember, he's had a double-digit target share in each of the last 2 games with the Broncos as a 10.5-point underdog. They're probably throwing more than they want to. McLaughlin is the guy they like in the passing game. And Imari DiMercado, again, we're trying to figure out this Arizona backfield. I think you'll see some Keontae Ingram. Maybe you'll see a touch or two for Rondell Moore. But it feels like when they're on third down, it will be DiMercado, who played 100% of the snaps when James Conner went down. And he's played Keontae Ingram's had 0 third down snaps this entire season. Now, Ingram was a scratch last week, so that's why one of the reasons why DiMercado got so much run after James Conner went down. But Cardinals are a touchdown underdog here. So the theory here is they're going to be throwing more, and so DiMercado, who's the passing down back, I think he's flex play usable in a PPR league. He's my running back 32. Let's not get crazy, but it feels like he's the safer bet if you're playing a Cardinals running back, if you have to, because you've got Aaron Jones and Najee Harris on a bye, whatever.
My man, Najee Harris.
You're not,
man. We spoke about him yesterday, but James Cook is the one for me. I know a lot of people would have hopped off the bandwagon a little bit after he did, effectively nothing against the Jags, but they were trailing that entire game. They were just never in position to really run the ball, constantly throwing, just couldn't stay on the field, couldn't convert a third down. James Cook will be fine, averaging almost 5 yards per carry, and gets a dream matchup against the Giants.
Jay, if you had to start one between Jaleel McLaughlin and Imari DiMercado, Barry has them RB31 and RB32. In your flex, who do you roll with? Do you roll with the early play for Thursday Night Football, or do you wait it out?
I think I would go DiMercado. Also, because you get a little bit of flexibility as well to understand the situation, just the extra few days. Because when it's that close, I kind of prize that flexibility. Also, Jaleel McLaughlin. The thing is that he probably will get passing game work because they're probably going to be down. But I just have a bit more confidence in the stability of DiMercado's role, which is a strange thing to say, but I think it's true.
All right, a couple running backs that make the hate list. We're going to start with Jonathan Taylor as he tries to get back into form, coming off the IR with the extension. He's got the Jacksonville defense this week. And Barry, he comes in as RB25 for you as the Colts try to get him back into form while Zach Moss is still a thing.
Yeah, it feels like he's more of a touchdown-dependent flex this week until we see the full workload for him, and we just don't know when that's going to be. Maybe it's this week. Maybe it's 2 weeks from now. I mean, the guy played 10 snaps last week. He played 10 snaps last week, and Zach Moss was awesome. So really all you're doing is you're banking on reputation. Obviously, the guy did get paid, but it's not a great matchup. Jags allow the 5th fewest rushing yards per game to running backs so far this year. Only one running back has scored 15 or more fantasy points against Jacksonville this entire year. I mean, they just shut down James Cook last week, right? And so the Jaguars, who have gone through this before, coming back from London, right? So they know sort of how to deal with that as well. So if you're telling me they've only allowed one running back all year to get at least 15 fantasy points. And if you say to me, well, listen, it's going to happen a second time. There's going to be one Colts running back that gets 15 fantasy points against them. You feel better about Zach Moss than you do at Jonathan Taylor this week. So, again, maybe he ramps up from 10 snaps to like 20 or something like that. But I think you're really going to need him to pay off into the end zone for him to be worth playing this week.
Yeah, I agree. This week isn't great for JT, but I would be looking to trade for Taylor if he has a bad game because – one, it's going to flip the snap count and the carries. And then two, quietly, the Colts offensive line is playing really well. It was a disaster last year. It wasn't even great the year before when JT had that amazing year. But Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, Braden Smith, these guys are all back to playing all-pro level. So it's going to turn, and JT, I think, will be a monster down the stretch.
And one other thing, this came out after we did the show yesterday, but I believe Adam Schefter tweeting out the fact that the expectation now is that it might be 4 to 8 weeks as Anthony Richardson deals with this AC sprain joint. And so one of the things we talked about when the injury came about is that in the 3 games that Gardner Minshew has played this year, the Colts are averaging 30 or more running back touches a game in those games. And so they still want to be run heavy, to your point. Like, the offensive line is a strength, and they want to be run heavy, that Shane Steichen wants to do that. But without Richardson to be one of the guys that's running the ball, that's more work for Taylor and Moss. They'll still be run heavy. And if Richardson's going to miss 2 months now, suddenly, or at least that's within the cards that he potentially could, you feel better about the workload of the running backs, less chances for them to get vultured at the goal line, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, very easy schedule for the Colts as well, which I think is pivotal there because they will be in game scripts where they can run.
Our next one, Jay, Miles Sanders. A lot of things going the wrong with direction for Miles Sanders. Snap rates going down, target shares going down, and quite frankly, this isn't an offense that can run the football either.
Who would you rather start, Matthew, this weekend? Miles Sanders or Chuba Hubbard?
Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Grim.
Well, because I don't know if Miles Sanders is 100% healthy. I mean, like, we saw the tweet the other day about, like, Frank Reich saying, like, Miles Sanders in practice this week, had a little something, very vague, but he, like, whatever, like, he's had the groin issue, he's been dealing with it, and as we talked about yesterday, Miles Sanders' passing game usage has completely disappeared the last 2 weeks, and Chuba Hubbard is getting there. And so a game in which we expect them to get absolutely destroyed by the Dolphins. I mean, the Panthers are, one of the worst teams. There's a reason Carolina picked first in the NFL draft last year. There's a reason they haven't won a game yet this year. And so the Dolphins, which is, as good a team as there is in the NFL right now, they should win this handily. And so whether it's because there be a negative game script and they trust Hubbard more in the passing game, or because Sanders isn't 100% healthy and in a game in which now they're down, they're like, you know what, Miles, just no reason to further injure yourself. Like, just go take a break. Yeah, I think I feel better. I don't feel good about any of them, but I think if forced to start one of them, I feel better about Hubbard.
Yep, agreed.
Our last one, Jerome Ford, and he's got the Niners defense. There's basically a trend this year, Barry. If somebody has the Niners defense, there's a good chance they show up on the hate list.
Yeah, I mean, look, San Francisco allows the fewest rushing yards per game to running backs this season. Teams that face 49ers are averaging a league low 11.8 running backs per carry. I mean, they're not being able to run the ball. The offense is so efficient on the other side of the ball, they find themselves a negative game script. I mean, they just shut down Tony Pollard. I like Jerome Ford, right? We all like Jerome Ford.
Oh, we love him.
He ain't Tony Pollard, and Tony Pollard could do nothing against this Niners defense as well. The 2 games that Ford has started, he's averaging just 2.3 yards per carry. What you're counting on with Ford is the passing game usage, but now it's either going to be a less than healthy Deshaun Watson or looking more and more likely it's P.J. Walker under center. And so maybe he gets you there with some passing game usage and some quick dump-offs because Walker will be under pressure. But I have him as barely a top 30 play this week. He's running back 27. Hard for me to see him as anything other than just kind of a PPR flex where you squint and hope.
Yeah, I can't imagine anyone's going to see more 8-man boxes than Jerome Ford and the Cleveland offense this week because, again, 20-mile-per-hour winds as well. In Cleveland, I would expect that San Francisco are going to try and make P.J. Walker, if it is P.J. Walker, throw the ball. So, yeah, not a great situation for Jerome Ford, who showed against the Ravens that he probably can't overcome, a difficult context in terms of game script and in terms of people loading up to stop the run.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.